Well, good morning, gang. Dr. J, and it's back to our Tuesday of nutrition. As we said, we were alternating a few things about with some money matters and also making sure we get the good stuff from none other than Jamie Hayes. Now, I don't know if you know that Jamie's actually been involved in the health and wellness and fitness industry most of his life. And what he did was he pioneered a lot of stuff in group exercise, ran the first or commandeered the first group exercise championships. And then he actually moved into getting a chain of clubs, which was revolutionized the fitness industry in Australia, the small boutique type of facilities, which I had the delight of working together with him. And then he actually moved into wellness and weight loss. And I must say that the transition has been a passion of Jamie's ever since I've known him. He's been an avid learner in marketing and sales, but it's always been an underlining process of not just weight loss, but it's actually wellness and weight loss. So we're actually really fortunate having Jamie pop on, a weekly up until just a week ago. This is the 14th session that we're doing. And we have a library of unbelievable gold. So welcome, Jamie, and thanks so much for taking time out this morning.
Hey, Steve, it's absolutely a pleasure, and welcome to all the SAC members and all your friends and anybody watching afterwards. Hopefully we can share one or two insights that might make a difference.
Oh, yeah. It changed the way a lot of us eating, where we're sleeping, how quickly when we eat, not when we don't eat, and some other areas of last time we were talking about the amount of sugar that's actually in not just the canned food, but actually food in general. And some of these insights, we call them ink spots in sales, but they're ink spots in nutrition. Like, gee whiz, I never knew that. So I've always got my pen, and hope you guys got your pen and paper handy, because we don't remember much. And what are we going to cover today, mate?
Well, you said, see more people, make more sales. But what I really want to, this is boring as hell, but it's so important. I want to give us a clearer perspective on COVID-19. Excuse me, let me turn that off. COVID-19 and some offensive and defensive strategies that everybody can do. Because if you see more people to make more sales, you are putting yourself potentially in front of people, particularly if you're doing in-person sales. And so there's some things you've got to watch out for yourself, and there's things you've got to watch out for the people you're seeing. So there are some things I want to share, and hopefully they'll help people.
Terrific. Well, everything, it's not just for COVID and so forth. I love what you're explaining to everybody, because it's life skills, even after COVID is dead and buried, which hopefully is sooner than later. But the things that we can continue to do and have to actually have a healthy life. I mean, when it comes down to it, a lot of the people in the SAC are in the health industry. And, they're about having people quality of life, not just having tons of money. It's no good being sick, being super rich, is it? So
no.
It's a fallacy to say, what's more valuable, your health or your wealth?
Absolutely. Well, my father used to say, there are no pockets in your shroud. You can't take it with you.
Yeah. So look, this time where there's a little bit of a reboot and some of the fear factors that are out there. And by the way, as an aside, when we actually go into fear, it actually reduces our immune system. Did you know that? When we go into a fear component, the fight or flight modality, the energy goes to different parts of our body, which means it can reduce our immunity. Now, the reason I say that is because if we actually have the safeguards and have the tools to use, eat the right things and do the right things, that reduces that fear component and be able to have the right immunity going into your body. So I'm really interested in what you have to say today, Jamie.
Steve, here's a saying, thoughts are things. So I completely agree with the statement you just made. We have an environment of fear, an environment of uncertainty, and that changes our blood chemistry. When we've got changes because of the way we're thinking, because of lack of information, not able to deal with uncertainty, then that fear response creates a chemical response in the body. So thoughts become things, and that stress response is not good for immunity. So you're completely correct. Now, just on corrections, I just want to remind everybody, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, I'm more like a librarian who just gathers the information and makes it available. And we've had an incredible success factor with literally tens of thousands of people losing hundreds of thousands of kilos of weight. And I didn't create the National Aerobics Championship, but I was involved in it and was a judge. But I'll have to give credit to my wife, Ellen. She was a much better judge than me.
Well,
Anyway,
I've actually got an old a video of you, mate, doing step. And you had a lovely little sweatband on, and you.
Can I buy it off you? Get it off the market.
All right, I'll let you take over.
Okay, now I do have a little bit of a PowerPoint, if you don't mind me just sharing a couple of things I had put together. Let's see, play for the start. And sorry, I'm not as good. I need to go to the Steve Jensen School of Screen Sharing. So let's try it this way.
Go down the bottom there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good to go. Great.
Push the little screen at the bottom.
Yep. Can you see that?
Look at that, mate. Perfect.
Great. And really, I just want to talk about living with COVID-19. I actually am turning my mind around to the fact that there is going to be no cure in the immediate future. There is going to be no vaccine in the immediate future. I mean, actually, just last night in the news in Brisbane, they're starting vaccine trials. But look, there's 140 trials going on around the world, just being rushed, and these people are diving in early, and good on those heroes for saying, yep, I'll get jabbed with the vaccine, because we don't know the side effects, and we don't know if they're going to be effective or the side effects. But and they may or may not be successful, and we may know that in 12 months' time, or it might take years. We just don't know. So again, we've got that uncertainty factor. But what is absolutely certain is that we've got to learn to live with it. And we've seen the shock waves, both nationally and federally, of governments responding different ways with different messages, and we're having to sort of interpret those messages, and they're changing all the time. So, what are we to do? And we've got now we're starting to realise, there's some costs of not shutting down, but there's some costs of shutting down. Right down to the costs of livelihoods, the community cost, and even the social isolation cost. So anyway, I just wanted to summarise a few thoughts or raise some discussion points, things to consider or reconsider that might be of value. And just before I go, Steve, you might recall, I think we shared some videos on dietflex.com.au/SAC, Sales Authority Club. And don't go there now, but I have added a link there to a very important or valuable paper written by Marianne Demasi. Now, she was one of the reporters, one of the scientists in the ABC Catalyst show. And she has written a paper called COVID-19 and Metabolic Syndrome, Could Diet Be the Key? So if people can just take a note of that, it's easy to remember, dietflex.com.au/SAC.
What I might get you to do is that at the end we might just
put it up
in the chat box, and they can then just click.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
But I just want to get that out there because it is a really valuable paper to read. It's only 2 pages, but definitely worth reading.
Terrific.
So I want to put things in perspective, and there are 2 defenses. One is avoiding infection, and the other one is maximising immunity. I mean, there's those that believe that it doesn't matter what you're going to do, you are going to get infected. Now, I think it's in your interest to avoid infection, which is not only the risk of being infected, but the risk of infecting others. And I think if we've all got a social conscience, we need to assume that we are infected, we're asymptomatic, which means we're infected and we don't know it, but we're infectious, which means we can infect others. So everybody's got a social responsibility. And of course, every night on the news, we see people responding with a lack of social responsibility. So, and it just leads to terrible outcomes, you know. They were infectious, but simply didn't know it. So it's just some stupidity out there. And then we want to talk about maximising immunity. So the first thing is that if somebody becomes infected, and there's a big discussion about herd immunity, now, and this is just this week's coming out, saying that if somebody does get infected but they're okay with it, and they develop antibodies, that 3 and 6 months later, people have been retested to see if those antibodies, those defence mechanisms within the body, are still there. And for many, it seems like those antibodies are disappearing. So it just raised the question, the uncertainty, if I get infected, will I have long-term defence? And probably the answer is no, that somebody could be reinfected. So again, that's why I've got this theme of learning to live with it, rather than saying, oh, I've been infected, it's all okay, or let's get infected and we'll get over it and then we'll be protected for life. Now, unfortunately, the evidence is coming out that this may not be true. And so we've got to learn to live with the unknown and the uncertainty. And that's why I think what you said is so important. You know, it's the fear of the unknown that can create stress, that can influence your immune function and actually make your defences worse. So it's not that the circumstances aren't going to change, it's how we respond to the circumstances that we've got some control over. And being informed is helpful. And I think there's been a lot of misinformation. For instance, we're told, don't wear masks. Now, the incentive for telling people not to wear masks was that they simply didn't have enough suppliers, to go to the hospital workers. And then even, like at Burnie, with the hospital outbreak there in Tasmania, they sent the wrong PPE gear there. Those hospital workers weren't even protected. They thought they were protected. So it's learning to live with the unknown and the uncertainty. And I think that's the new pathway forward for all of us. So let's get into avoiding infection. Everybody with me? If anybody's got any serious questions, we'll have Q&A, but feel free to interrupt with any questions, put your hand up or whatever. So, first rule, do not relax on social distancing. Elle and I had dinner with some friends. Gee, old friends, we're in Queensland. Now we've just opened our borders, we've got virtually 0 cases. Do we shake hands? Do we hug? All those normal things. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to say you're better off not shaking hands. You're better off not giving them a hug. You're better off just developing the habit. We just don't do hugs, kisses, handshakes, for the foreseeable future. So I think we're better off not to relax social distancing. No shakes, no hugs, no kisses. And wear a mask when you cannot socially isolate. Now, when I mean a mask, I mean something across your face. And there is absolutely, it's abundantly clear that masks, depending upon the quality of masks, have a limited protection on the wearer. But they definitely offer protection for those people around the wearer. And so it's a community good. In Australia, we've lived with this stigma that, wearing a mask, you fool, and it's the Asian people and people from China, but maybe they've been the smart ones, and when we see somebody walking down the street wearing a mask, we should probably say, hey, thanks, appreciate it, and we should be wearing a mask at the same time, particularly, if you're getting into buses, trains, lifts, and anything that, you have to be absolutely defensive there and maybe carrying a mask on you at all times, or at least something covering your face, something you can throw in a hot wash. Now, we know that the social distancing, the rule is like 1.5 metres because droplets from our breath can sort of fall to the ground and after 1.5 metres. But now there's new research about aerosols, which are micro droplets that they can travel a lot further, they can be infectious, and perhaps stay around a lot longer, both in the air and on surfaces. So I think increasingly we're going to hear about not just the droplets, but these micro droplets called aerosols. And so just be aware of that. And particularly when you're around the vulnerable, people who are older, people who have comorbidities, diabetes, heart disease and things like that, you want to be super defensive around them. If they're happy with it, FaceTime or a Zoom call or whatever like that. As a matter of fact, I'm taking it upon myself to reach out to old friends and relatives and either a phone call or a Zoom call and say, hi, how you doing? You okay? And nice to hear your voice. And the other evidence when it comes to avoiding infection is that, Steve, I don't know if people know this, but the virus is not a living thing. It actually lives when it attaches to us. And washing your hands, so don't think of, we often hear, does that kill the virus? Well, there's increasing discussion that you can't actually kill the virus. What you can do is get it off your hands. And so there's definitely no doubt that hand washing, which actually gets things off your hands, particularly if you're going to touch your mask, touch your face, your ears, and whatever like that. Who's the tennis player who's constantly, before he serves, Rafa? Yeah, Ellen loves Rafa. But he goes through this routine and he's touching his face all the time, which is absolutely not the right thing to do. But be aware that washing your hands with hot and soapy water if you have the virus on your hands, it gets it off your hands. And that's what you want to achieve. So washing hands is always way better. So and gel's the second best. So it's good to have there. So let's stop there. I just want to stop that share and see, in regards to avoiding infection, does anybody have any questions so far?
Marianne, yes.
Okay, so I used to be a nurse. I was a nurse for 25 years. So you're not telling me anything that I don't know. My mother's in a nursing home. So I'm not. Yes. This is not actually a question. This is just, I'm going to tell you something.
Okay.
My mother's in a nursing home. She's 90. Mm-hmm. And my father lives at home and he's nearly 92. We're allowed to go into the nursing home and visit. And we have our temperature taken before we go in. We sanitize our hands and we go directly to her room, but there's no thought of us ever wearing a mask.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if the instructions to people visiting people in nursing homes will change. Now, I may be proven wrong, but it wouldn't surprise me if that advice will change. That it is an additional layer of protection for those around you. Because you, of course, as a matter of fact, Ellen and I, my wife and I, we had a weekend with our grandchildren, and grandkids, spread bugs and things like that. On the Tuesday night, I came down with a bit of a sore throat and a cough, and the Wednesday night, Ellen. And we were going to visit friends the following weekend. We thought, let's go get tested. And we did go and get tested. It was an interesting experience, not entirely unpleasant, not pleasant, but not unpleasant. And but the fact is that we could have walked out of that hospital, even though we were both tested negative, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marianne, and picked up the virus somewhere.
Definitely. There was something on Facebook yesterday, a doctor posted it, and he said, okay, you get tested on the Monday, you go and see somebody on the Tuesday and they infect you, and then Wednesday you get your test results that say you're negative, but you're actually positive. And then I commented on it saying, why would you go and see somebody on the Tuesday? Once you've had your test, you're supposed to self-isolate for 48 hours.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah, so you shouldn't be in contact with anybody else. If you've had the test, you stay at home, you self-isolate, social distance, wear a mask, whatever, until you get your result and you know that you're negative. then the next day you still could touch somebody, something, and get it. So, there's a lot of false negatives.
Yep.
And all of that. But I think it's just all common sense. And when we go and visit Mum, we're not allowed to, like Dad used to go into the kitchen, talk to the chef there, because Mum's celiac and she's also got a swallowing problem. So he would go and say, that meal was good or that meal was bad, or, why did they put a bloody piece of bread on her tray, or, whatever. But he's not allowed to go into the kitchen anymore. He's not allowed to go into the dining room. He's only allowed to walk from reception to her room and back out. And that's all we're allowed to do. But, they check everybody's temperature, and it will alarm. Like, there's an alarm at the front door. If you're over 37.4, it's going to alarm, so you're not allowed in. You've got to sanitize your hands. And when we go in and visit her, I don't kiss her anymore. Like, I haven't kissed her since this all started, and she's 90. She had a birthday. Yeah. So we don't kiss her, we don't touch her. But Dad does feed her, so he gets close to her. But, yeah, I mean, it is difficult. And as you say, it's something you've got to learn to live with. So it's like terrorism. I see the COVID-19 like terrorism.
That's a very good analogy.
You can't live your life thinking, oh, my God, they're going to drop a bomb. They're going to drop a bomb on us. Because if you live like that, you're never going to go outside. So it's the same with COVID-19. You can't live your life thinking, oh, my God, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to get it. I'm going to die. You've just got to live your life with common sense, social distancing, washing your hands, and all of that. That's my...
Yes, unfortunately, common sense isn't 100% common.
No.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, well, there you go. My mother was celiac, and she had a swallowing problem. So I completely get it. Okay, well, thanks, Marianne. And gee, good on you for having a mother 90 and a father 92.
He's not 92 yet.
Oh, okay.
October.
All right, so let's progress to the stage 2. So we've gone through avoiding infection. What about maximising immunity, which is making the assumption, gee, we all have a pretty high risk of being infected. What can we do to improve our chances? So, for instance, anybody who's on the roads, either as a driver or a car, has a risk of being involved in a car accident, whether it's you caused the accident or somebody else ran into you and somebody else caused the accident. But no doubt you choose to wear your seatbelt. Now, people, Steve, you've taught me, people are motivated to do things to gain pleasure or avoid pain. And I often contemplate whether they're putting on a seatbelt to minimise their risk or to avoid getting fined.
There would be both. I mean, the bottom line, when there's a blitz on, they'll say, "Whoa, I'll buckle up." Or when a policeman drives past, they instantly go for their seatbelt or whatever the case may be. So some people, I think you and Marianne said it perfectly. There are some common sense processes, but we are the human beings. They love to break the rules. They sometimes get forgetful. And I think things like this, like today, to remind people, see, what doesn't get spoken about isn't important. If you don't talk about it regularly, it's like a sales target. If you don't talk about the numbers on a daily basis or the budget, it's not important. And people say, oh, they should know. But no, people are human beings. We have a very short attention span. So if you're not talking about it and reminding people ongoing, not nagging, people will forget, and they'll. It's not because it's intentionally forgotten. It just becomes not front of mind.
Absolutely. So let's. So firstly, maximising immunity. There's no doubt there's an association with those people who are either overweight or obese. Are more likely to have worse outcomes should they become infected, and more likely to go to hospital, more likely to die. So, if you're carrying extra weight, doing something about it is a really smart activity. And it's not just weight, but increasingly it's the waist measurement that's indicative of our health, because it's the visceral fat. I like to say, if you've got fat that jiggles up and down, which is subcutaneous fat just underneath the skin, that's probably okay, but it's the visceral fat inside around our organs, around our gut, that is associated with an inflammatory state, and I'll talk more about that. And increasingly we'll hear this term metabolic syndrome. And apart from the elderly, it's those people who have metabolic syndrome, comorbidities, and that's particularly high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, that they are significantly at higher risk. And the underlying condition with high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease is insulin resistance, which is, that suddenly your body's normal insulin processes, and insulin is the fabulous hormone that we all need to help us stabilize our blood sugar, because it goes knocking on the cells of the liver, the muscles, the fat cells, and eventually those cells, after years and decades of being in a high sugar, high insulin state, those cells lose their responsiveness. It's like the boy who cried wolf. And so, and insulin resistance is closely associated with a high waist to hip ratio, waist to height ratio. So if, as we've said in the past episodes, if your waist is more than 50% of your height, you don't need a blood test. You probably need to start doing something about your diet, because insulin resistance is diet caused. The only way to deal with that is diet. So, so you really need to get serious about it. So a good old-fashioned tape measure around your waist. If your waist is more than 50% of your height, you've probably got a problem. Now, why hasn't your doctor diagnosed this years or even decades earlier? Because you've been asymptomatic. My father was a doctor. He'd say, what ails you? What hurts you? I say, oh, Dad, I'm feeling fine. So you go to your doctor about a broken leg. He'll say, is there anything else? No, I feel fine. But you might have insulin resistance. And why, cynically, I think one of the reasons that they don't test for insulin resistance is that there isn't a drug for it. There's no doubt that the drug metformin may improve insulin sensitivity slightly, but it's mainly diet caused, and the solution is diet. And as we know, doctors are not trained in nutrition. And even if they were, they don't have time in a 6 to 10 minute GP appointment. So we really want well-controlled blood sugar and insulin levels. And just as a note of caution, somebody might say, oh yeah, my doctor checked out everything, I'm okay, my blood sugar is normal. But somebody can have blood sugar that is in the normal range, but their body is swimming in hyperinsulinemia, high insulin levels, which is highly inflammatory, and that goes completely undetected for years, if not decades, until suddenly they've got pre-diabetes and diabetes. And there are specific forms, apart from diet, there are specific forms of exercise, like resistance exercise to rebuild muscle tone, and even interval training. And that's the type of exercise where you go fast, slow, fast, slow. You walk, and then you walk super fast, or you walk, then you run, or HIIT, high intensity interval training, where you do one exercise, then shift to another exercise. Steve, you remember in the old days we used to do circuits where we'd go from an upper body to a lower body to an upper body to a lower body. So, that they are the key things to look out for when it comes to maximizing your immune function, your body's defenses. So let's flip back. If anybody's got any questions on those simple strategies to maximize your immune function.
It was, we remember we talked a few weeks ago about some of the foods you could supplement. So making sure that we say diet, but then there's specific types of foods that were much more effective, and the way you prepare the food keeps the antioxidants in there and the anti-carcinogenic type things in the food, because making sure that we get fresh food and not stuff out of a packet without tins, and to make sure that if it's, they say weight loss starts in the kitchen, but also immunity starts in what you put in your body and what you subject your body to. Why don't we just do just a couple of things, just as a quick recap, just for, a couple of bullets of some of the foods that people could do to make sure that diet.
Absolutely. Let's go for it. I'm way ahead of you, so let's get into it. Firstly, Marianne, I think you were just cooking your breakfast. Is that right? Sorry, let me make that away.
No, I wasn't cooking it. It was actually a smoothie.
Okay, fine. But
a very green smoothie by the look of things.
No, it was pink.
Okay.
It had raspberries in it with collagen and inulin and a Metagenics protein powder.
Great.
Flaxseed, a kefir, some water, cinnamon. And
fantastic.
Partially hydrogenated guar gum.
And so, is that your first meal of the day?
Yep.
And when did you have dinner last night?
I don't do intermittent fasting. I probably should.
No. I'm not. Just answer the question. So when did you have dinner last night?
When did I have dinner? Probably about 7:30.
Okay, so let's say 8 till 9 is 13 and a half hours. So even though you're not doing intermittent fasting, you've got a 13 and a half hour overnight fast, which is great. So I think, for many people, their first meal of the day isn't at 9 o'clock, because here we are at 9 o'clock and you're preparing that, but they might do it at 5 o'clock. And, so that their time without eating, their non-feeding window is very, very short. So you've got a long non-feeding window, which is great. So I think, and you're preparing your own meal using fresh perishable foods, so that's fantastic. So you're doing two strategies there. One, that you've got a long non-eating window, which is a very good strategy for bringing down insulin levels and normalising insulin levels. And I heard you say you had protein powder in there, so you're prioritising protein in that shake. So, and I don't know if I heard you say you had fruit in there, but it sounded from what the ingredients that was a very low carbohydrate shake as well. And you had some kefir there, which is probably no doubt very good for your gut health. So, bunch of good things, Matter of fact, I think you should publish that recipe. Fantastic. But cook or prepare your meals using fresh perishable foods. Prioritise protein in every meal and snack. That's exactly what you've done. You've got protein. Avoid adding sugar or anything like sugar. And Marianne talked about visiting her mother in nursing home. Unfortunately, the meals they have, because they're addicted to the low-fat dogma, are by its very nature low-fat, high-carb. So they are higher sugar-yielding diets. Exactly the opposite that they should be having to maintain immune function. So, and I think our dietary guidelines have a lot to answer for on that. And the paper which I shared, at dietflix.com.au/SAC, really puts into question the dietary guidelines, particularly the American dietary guidelines, and Australia follows suit. So we want to avoid foods with sugar added, avoid starchy and fried foods, definitely limit alcohol. You might have a glass of wine with a meal, and avoid the seed oils, throw them out. The polyunsaturated seed oils, highly inflammatory. So we have no need for them. If you do want to use fat in your food, just butter, coconut oil, lard, things like that. And Steve, to answer your question, or the point you made was, here are, if we're looking at food labels, here are just some of the names that they use to disguise, the word sugar. And people think, oh, that looks healthy. But this is just remarkable, the extent they go to hide the word sugar, because if they can put, the number one ingredient they have to put at the top, but if they can divide sugar into whole blood sugar, then they can hide that. And remember, one of our previous bits of advice is the golden rule, if you want to learn how to read food labels, is simply stop eating food with labels, or reduce the number of foods you eat with labels. So, and then you don't have to worry about all these names. But it's absolutely ridiculous. And in our last episode, the episode before, we spoke about the sugar equivalents of many, even fresh foods like fruits and things like starches such as
rice,
bread, rice, stuff like that. So here are some measures. If you're going to be speaking to your doctor, here are some measures that they might be looking at. Your blood pressure is less than 135 over 90, or at least, over 85, or at least less than 140 over 90. Because if it's consistently above that, then you want to be talking to your doctor about that. And if you're carrying extra weight, not getting enough exercise, and Steve, your advice, thoughts are things, it's response to, to circumstances known. Mindset activities say, I can't change the weather, but I can change my response to the weather. High fasting blood sugar, it's easy to get a blood sugar meter, quite inexpensively at any pharmacy. And increasingly what's becoming available is CGM, which is constant glucose monitoring. So they put a patch on your arm, which you wear for 2 weeks, so you can see your body's response to different foods. And remember the saying, one diet does not suit everybody, that, what is one man's meat is another one's poison. So we all respond differently. And so you might have two twins, they might have, let's say, 2 slices of toast, and they might have dramatically different blood sugar response. So CGM, or continuous glucose monitoring, people who've done it, I have not done it, but I intend to do it, can be absolutely life-changing, because it can tell you what your body's response to different carbohydrate-containing foods is. If you've got high triglycerides, greater than 1.7 millimoles, you've got potentially, large waist circumference. We mentioned that, but I prefer waist to height ratio. But females, 88 centimeters. And if anybody's watching, people from Asian backgrounds, it could. These, waist limits might be a little bit lower. The HDL, or what's known as the good cholesterol, if that is low too, and definitely we find when we put somebody on a control into doing some resistance exercise, not only does their weight goes down, but their HDL goes normalize, and often if they've got high blood pressure, food. So there we are, very simple measures. So if you're speaking to your doctor, say, hey doc, I am carrying extra weight around my waistline. I'd like to get monitored to see if I've got hyperinsulinemia. In addition to my blood sugar test, could you test my fasting insulin levels too?
So as we get older, as we get taught, we should all go have our checks each year. Some people do them every 6 months, like myself, but they should have their physical. Now there are physicals and physicals. Some people do look at your mouth, check your ears, and cough, all that sort of jazz. Or you're good. Or you can actually go and get a blood test and ask for the full McCoy. And if you ask for these other things, it's always a good idea. And it's becoming more and more increasingly essential, I believe, everybody is to have their lady tests and their men's tests more regularly. But if you're able to ask them for a little bit extra, we're very fortunate in Australia because it doesn't cost us anymore. It's all on Medicare. So I think it's if you want to get these tests done, put it in your diary. I know actually on my birthday, it's one of the things that I do the following week. I go and get a full test, and then 6 months later, I do the full testing again. So and these sorts of things can come out in the blood tests, I would presume.
Yeah, although the doctors are wary of what's called over-servicing, so that if it's not the standard of care, they won't order the test. Sometimes you've got to talk, say, listen, doctor, I'm pretty stressed out and concerned. High insulin, mind checking that as well. So, because they might just say, oh, well, it's standard of care just to test your blood sugar level, because you see, you could have high insulin levels for years and years and years, and eventually your pancreas just burns out its ability to provide insulin, and so then your blood sugar levels go up. But that was way too late. Why wait? Why not be preventive and to say, gee, am I covering my normal blood sugar with high insulin levels? Do I have the early signs of insulin resistance, which is going to predispose me to diabetes, blood pressure, and heart disease? So sometimes you've got to navigate with the medical system. Sometimes you've got to find a different doctor.
Well, I think it's just being a front of mind, just bringing it up today. It's well, sure, we can avoid getting into harm's way, but now we can actually do things, and then we have control. And if you go to your doctor, maybe we can ask a few more questions and ask for a little bit of extra tests. So that's good to know. Good to have that at front of mind. And Micheline, have you got any questions for Jamie? You look very smart today, Micheline.
Thank you. Thank you.
She got a new hairdo, I think.
Yeah, she does. She's a few kilos lighter from what I know.
What I want to ask Jamie is, my mum is a diabetic, and my father's had heart disease. So if I improve, Dad's 85 and Mum's 77. They are on a lot of medications. Now, if we were to improve their diet and their movement, at their age, is that going to make a difference?
Absolutely. And I've just put a link in the chat. If you go to vitahealth.com, VITA health.com, there's a company that said, let's provide remote telehealth with a very low carb diet where people which was an indication that they were complying with that diet. And about 18 months ago, they published results after 1 year. Then people criticise that and say, well, that's not long term. People of all ages and people up to the same age as your mother, well, that's not long. Now they've done it over 2 years. As a matter of fact, I think they've just released results. I would go and look at vitahealth.com to see that their peer-reviewed journals to show of a low-carb diet at any age. There's definitely no point in throwing petrol on the fire. If they have, and diabetes, the inability to hydrate, and the typical process has been, but your blood sugar with insulin. Well, in itself is inflammatory. So I do that. So why not simply bring down the carbohydrate load? And what people find, is that their need for insulin comes down. As a matter of fact, you can do a search for, I'm going to put it in the thing, Dr. David Unwins. He was speaking in Australia. He's from the UK, and he's a GP. And guess what? One of his patients, who he was each year increasing his insulin levels, came to him and said, "Doc, I think you've got to bring down my insulin levels." And he was about to retire at 55. And he said, "What have you done?" He said, "Well, I've been on this keto diet, this low-carb diet." And now he's one of the leading proponents. They put literally hundreds of thousands of people across the UK. And in his surgery, they monitor the cost of the insulin of their patients, and they have reduced the cost to the national healthcare system of insulin dosage to the patients in their surgery by just under £50,000. Now, if every surgery across the UK did that, that would solve, the UK's completely unaffordable, healthcare bill. So, so it's worth, having a look at presentations from Dr. David Unwins and definitely Verta Health. So, there's a lot of information. The CEO of Diabetes USA recently declared that she is not only is she a diabetic, but she has gone on a low-carb diet. Even Diabetes Australia are slowly changing their messages, saying, yes, this is an alternative process that may well be healthy. That they go very, very slowly. So there's just increasing evidence that this is a smart way to go.
Great question.
But do your research. I think whatever your problem in life, like particularly if it's a health problem, study what you seek, become a world expert, so that you learn as much as your doctor, or at least that you can have intelligent conversation with your doctor. And good on YouTube, the university called YouTube, so that, there's a lot of misinformation, but there's a lot of good information. Oh, I didn't say, if anybody wants to, I put the link there. If anybody says, I think I need to shop for a new doctor, and I want one that's low-carb friendly or low-carb informed, if they go to lowcarbdownunder.com.au, which is good, they've got a whole list of doctors and dietitians in Australia and New Zealand that they could go and speak, and many of them do. It may not be right near you, but they do telehealth consultations as well. So there's some good links for you.
Fantastic, thank you. Just very quickly, I have been doing the low-carb diet since we've started, Jamie, and most of the pain in my joints has disappeared. Wow. The reflux has just gone, and the fluid retention in my feet, my balance has come back to normal, and that's only been in about 4 weeks. It's been really, really good.
Wow, that was a good testimonial. That's a cracker. And I must say, Micheline, you are looking really well in your face, and it's even, you can see you've lost some weight in your face. It's definitely
facially you do look good. And isn't that interesting? What drugs or supplements did we prescribe to you?
Nothing, except to get off the breads and get off the sugars, and that's exactly what I've done. And if I do take a little bit, I can't stand it. Marianne's been an inspiration, by the way.
Let's give it. Marianne, well, good on you too. Thank you.
Marianne is an avid exerciser. She was a group fitness instructor. She's been in health clubs herself. She's has a lot of experience in over 25 years in helping people in nursing, and she's an avid exerciser. She does body pump, twice a day, on yoga, then Jess off to another run. She's an exercise machine. But
fantastic.
Yeah.
But terrific. So congratulations.
Now, Micheline, just so I get that carefully, just repeat the symptom changes that you have noticed.
Okay. The reflux, the heartburn has disappeared.
Okay, reflux.
The fluid, the cravings have gone.
Cravings
the fluid
gone.
Retention has gone, and my balance is much more together.
And balance.
Yeah. There was one more, I can't remember.
And
joints is gone.
Yeah,
sorry?
the pain is gone.
Pain in your joints.
Sorry?
No pain in your joints, you said.
Yeah, no pain in the joints. So obviously my demeanour is better as well, and I've got much more energy.
And do you now find physical activity easier?
Yes, much easier. My next goal now is to move on and do some of the weight training and the intermittent,
Fantastic.
fast, slow. But I've also been doing intermittent fasting as well. I've been doing 16 hours and 8 hours.
16-8, fantastic. Well done.
And I've increased the water.
Wow. You do. I must say, you're looking very well. Look, hey, Marianne, I knew you had
We didn't say anyway.
Look, you look great. And so, no, you just do. So congratulations. And Jamie,
Because what Steve and I noticed, which you didn't mention, is you do look younger, Marianne.
Then what?
So
Younger
it's like
than
getting
what?
well, it's like getting a facial. People could go back to the very first YouTube, and I think they'd notice a difference, frankly. So
Yeah.
Ah, that's interesting. That's probably because when we were first in lockdown, we had a lot of stress from work, and then we had 3 months off, and so.
well, maybe.
But in our business, yeah, go. You talk, Marianne.
No, I was going to ask you a question about getting the maximising immunity, about talking about the microbiome.
What's the question?
Well, I take in my smoothies collagen and inulin, and the partially hydrolyzed guar gum and the flaxseed. So those sort of, if your gut is healthy, then that helps with your immunity as well. Is that
Definitely.
right? Yes.
That's right.
But you didn't mention that in your maximising immunity.
No, that's right. I'll tell you why.
It's a big subject.
The freedoms that I've adopted on all things, and there's definitely a recognition of gut health, immunity, add or take away from their diet to boost gut health. And I've been studying this for many, many. I can't say I could definitively put on print, do this and your health will improve. But I remain, let me say, instead of being all things or have an answer to all questions, but look, what you've raised is a very, very important issue, and hopefully the things that you're putting into your shake, the inulin, and you'll put in some fermented foods as well.
Did he just drop out?
He's just gone on to freeze by the look of things.
Yeah. Did I go on to freeze? Did I? Anyway, on gut health, it's not my area of expertise, but I remain a student.
Okay.
Great. Well, again, thanks Michelin and Marianne for joining us. Great questions. It's always good having good questions fired at the guru. So thanks a lot for joining us this morning. It's been terrific. And Jamie, thanks again. Got a stack of notes myself, and always great to remind people what we think they know. See, sometimes we think people know stuff, but the problem is that they heard it once before but weren't ready to learn it. So repetition is the mother of learning and skill and implementation. So I really appreciate your time, and absolutely fantastic to be able to put it into context with the COVID raising its ugly head again. So I think you're...
Thanks, Steve. I just think we've all got to learn to live with it and have common sense, but informed common sense. So, and there is an interesting paper. I just put the link in, dietflex.com.au/SAC. They can click the button, download that 2-page review. It's not overly technical, but it does point in a new direction that, it's entitled COVID-19 Metabolic Syndrome, Could Diet Be the Key?
Right. Well, I'll copy those and put them in the SAC, and I'll put it in the SCC as well.
Great.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate your time this morning. All right, gang.
You.
I think he's on freeze again. Anyway, going to wrap it up for the guys. And for those of you that watch this on replay, take some notes. If you haven't seen some of the other sessions with Jamie, there was a couple of debriefs. I've taken some screenshots, and I'm going to put some of those foods up there in the SAC too, so you don't have to go through everything and scrub through. Action is everything. Put some things into practice, just 1 or 2 from this morning, and I'm sure you'll stay safe. I'm Dr. J. We'll see you later. Bye for now.